Good morning. My name is Sam. I am an alcoholic and I'm also a son of recovery. Let's start out with the Serenity Prayer. Good and gracious God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So I'm reading through 12 Secular Steps. I'm in chapter 6, and we're going through, which is phase 2 of the recovery program. So we're on step 5. Honestly admit to myself and to another human being the results of my inventory, including my defects of character. That is there, step 5. The details of how you go about sharing your inventory should be worked out with the person you are sharing it with. It is a good idea to talk to them before using the inventory suggestions I gave earlier, just so you're both on the same page concerning steps 4 and 5. I have met with sponsees who have used the NA Step 4 guide I mentioned earlier. When they're ready, we just informally sit down and talk about their written results for a few hours. We organize patterns of people and defects, and we hit a level of detail on transgressions that pushes the comfort level a little. Getting past the comfort zone was important to me when I did my 5th step. In truth, the biggest benefit I got out of the formal 5th step meeting with my sponsor was the sense that I had really put myself out there and trusted this person. I felt like I had taken a big step toward rejoining humanity through this connection. That was unexpected, but it also gave me a lasting feeling that this recovery process was going to work out just fine. Most of the work on defects and building character is done informally in recovery as you continue to attend meetings, get active in service, and socialize with others in the fellowship. Privacy and the 5th step meeting. When I hear someone's 4th step inventory as part of their 5th step, the information is kept private, with the following exceptions that I let sponsees know before we start. If they have abused, are currently abusing, or have interest in abusing a child, I will report it. If they reveal plans to seriously hurt someone, I will report it. If they are abusing an animal, I won't keep that to myself. To date, these issues have not come up. With a sponsor or professional, give the details. In meetings, respect your own privacy. That is very important, so I can't wait to hear what he says about this. Experienced 12-step members tend to warn against sharing too much detail about our histories when we are in the first year of recovery. It is suggested that we share in a general way at meetings or in large social groups rather than confessing details on experiences like felonies we've committed or being the victim of rape, childhood physical and sexual abuse, and other traumatic and highly personal experiences. Our judgment is clouded for at least the first 6 months, and we regret sharing such details in this way. That is really true. Really, respect your own privacy. Don't give out too much detail. You can save details for personal conversations with people or later on down the road, but keep it general and, allow yourself some healing time and keep that stuff with just between your sponsor and maybe a couple really close people. Steps 6 and 7. Internalizing the principles and values that effectively rebuild character. Let's define principles and values for the sake of clarity as we use these terms in discussing these steps. A principle is a generally accepted rule or standard of conduct. Specific principles will include honesty, responsibility, which includes accountability, willingness, and open-mindedness. We should also accept the golden rule. Treat others as you would have them treat you as a guiding principle. A value can serve as a standard of conduct, but the definition of value needs to be broader. Values can be personal and very subjective, and there are also values that are cultural in nature. The specific values I wish to include for our purposes are love, compassion, faith, fairness, serenity, generosity, humility, and gratitude. So step 6, became willing to change defects in character. Before we suggest strategies and objectives for step 6, let's revisit the traditional version, which reads as follows. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. How can we reconcile these two versions? How do we do the work, or does God? Do we do the work, or does God? The answer is that we do the work. Whether we are a person of faith or a skeptic, we do the same work and use the same principles and values. The principles and values I listed for steps 6 and 7 are, broadly speaking, universal. They are in the teachings of Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, and most other well-respected religious figures. They're the same basic values that secular humanism and other agnostic philosophies hold dear. From either source, from either source, heaven or earth, these principles tie the individual into something greater than self. Now that we have common ground, let's get to work. Many people of faith and recovery pray every morning to ask God to help them be the person He wants them to be today. I can't imagine a better way to do step 6. The act of prayer clears away the background noise of life, and the person becomes aware of their connection to the divine. This is true open-mindedness and focus at the same time. Agnostics should do the same with meditation. Meditation calms us into open-mindedness and allows us to focus on a commitment to use positive principles and values in our decisions and actions today. I like the serenity prayer, for it reminds us to create this sort of serenity and then choose acceptance or action when we are faced with a trying situation. Many times, if we can distance ourselves from emotional reactions, we intuitively know the right thing to do. Some tips on exchanging defects for principles and values. Tip 1. Know what your defects are and try to detect them before you make choices during stressful situations. If your defect is anger or frustration, learn how to insert a 10-second delay before you act. Tip 2. Keep the suggested principles and values in mind, but really, if you treat others as you would have them treat you, just be a decent person. You'll do just fine today. Tip 3. Improve your communication with others by listening. Be conscientious, and don't interrupt or reply before others have finished. This is an amazing habit to practice. That is an amazing habit to practice, and I need to practice it so much. I interrupt people so often, and my spouse to be probably the higher victim of it, and I need to really work on that. I think this is now tip 4. Yes, tip 4. Try not to expect more from someone than they have the capacity to give, and set boundaries to protect yourself from their capacity to take. You'll avoid many new resentments this way. Boundaries are a major thing to really build up and know what your boundaries are in situations when you're becoming sober, and even afterwards, but especially when you're coming sober. You need to set some boundaries and really stick to them. And tip 5, identify needs and wants. Attend to your needs first, especially when spending money. That is very true. Make sure that all your needs are met before you really go out and start spending some money. Step 7, accepted responsibility for my actions. For me, this simply translates into, just for today, don't be an asshole. I really like this guy. I attended a speaker meeting once, and a man in his late 30s spoke on the topic of responsibility. When he entered recovery, he had lost his job, house, wife, kids, and dog, and no one in his family was currently on speaking terms with him. He had his vehicle, and he took that with all he owned inside it as he tried and failed at a geographical cure by going to a new city. He returned and started recovery in a 12-step program. When he was a few months sober in the program, he shared at a meeting all that he had lost and how the pain of those losses made him willing to try something new and take suggestions. After the meeting ended, he struck up a conversation with an old-timer, and at one point the old-timer corrected his story, telling him that nothing and no one he had mentioned were lost. They were all now under someone else's care, someone responsible. His kids, his family, his job, his house, and even his dog deserved better care. The old-timer told him that if he worked hard at recovery, put his sobriety first above all things, and became someone responsible, he might have the privilege of finding some of these people and things once again. The man in his 30s took the old-timer's words to heart, and the story is a pretty happy one right now. He concluded his talk that night by explaining that living up to responsibilities is part of love. When you place the needs of others above your wants, his definition of the capacity to love, then the responsibilities that fall on you are things you get to do and want to do rather than have to do. Go back to our model, the pyramid, and you can see that love and belonging and self-esteem are two outcomes of this step, and of accepting responsibility for our lives. When we act in a way that is true to these responsibilities, we build esteem in the eyes of others and in ourselves. Step 8. listed all persons I had harmed, and became willing to make amends to them all. If you followed my suggestions for step 4, you are nearly done with this step. If you did not, that's okay. This step is self-explanatory. I suggest you make sure you add and revise names and offenses until you are satisfied you have honestly covered all the significant harm that you have caused others. Now, step 9. Make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Once again, my suggestions will differ significantly from those of many 12-step traditionalists. Every step, to me, is about your recovery and your ability to play a responsible role in present and future relationships. Should you be responsible and make amends for the harm you have done others in the past? Yes. Do you need to track down many dozens, even hundreds of people to make confessions and try to right every wrong you committed in the past? I think you're crazy if you attempt to do that, and I do as well. If you have less than a year and are thinking about going to those you have harmed to offer amends, I ask you to first consider this. Many people close to you have no reason to believe you've changed. They've probably heard apologies and promises from you before, and there's the distinct possibility that when you arrange these noble encounters, make dramatic confessions, or swear oaths like a hero, that this will be made right. Perhaps all this is still all about you. The step is a tool to help you stay sober and to improve your relationships with others, with an emphasis on today and moving forward. Before you make amends, I suggest you consider the different types of amends you can make. Furthermore, rather than jump into amends right away, give it time, get advice, and consider what is the best strategy for specific amends. That is all very true. Give it time, get advice, and consider what is the best strategy for each specific amends. Very true. Here are some suggestions. Types of amends and some strategies about their use. 1. A living amends. Living amends. When you get sober and live by new principles and values, you have made a living amends to everyone on or off your list by completing the step work to this point. These living amends are already in place. Some people, to be fair, will be due more. So living amends is the first thing. It's just you've gotten to this step and you're doing it. So that's awesome. So, traditional face-to-face amends. Arrange a time to speak with the person, tell them you're in recovery and making amends, directly inform them what you did to wrong them, and then ask, would you add anything? And ask, what can I do to make it right? Now listen to their response and do what you can to make the amends they request. I highly encourage you to seek advice on these amends before going through on the big ones. On little ones, do them as opportunities arise. Prioritize these amends as follows. Ones that must be done now, ones that can wait, and ones that may never be. For some people with whom you have close contact or a lot of history, you may want to wait until they pick a time to talk to you, perhaps a time when they initiate questions about your recovery or addiction. You'll learn from experience that with some people, especially those who have broken ties with you, contacting them or attempting face-to-face amends is not appropriate. For you to stay out of their lives or avoid intimate conversations, especially if they already requested this, might be best. That is very true. There are definitely a couple of people who I think reaching out to and digging stuff up would just be really terrible for their life. So I'm not going to do that to them. And I'm just going to be willing to do it if the time arises. But just know that that we're probably better off this way. So, letters and other in absentia, not physically present amends. I've made amends by calls and one by text. It seemed appropriate given the distance and conditions. Some people make amends by writing letters to people who have passed, then reading them, perhaps at their grave, then burning or destroying the letter. I don't recommend written amends to living people, especially when details might bring harm to you or your family. Seek advice on those. Time and other restitutions without being asked amends. If it's not time to have face-to-face amends yet, for their sake, there may be some situations where you could go ahead with restitutions without being asked. Replace things you stole. Pay back money you stole or borrowed. this sort of thing. Seek advice on big restitutions. Don't harm your family and those to whom you have responsibilities with substantial amends that may have large consequences, like financial ones. There is also the amends, the restitution of giving your time to people, provided they welcome that, which is very true. My sponsor and friends in recovery were very helpful when it came to making amends, and I quickly learned to use moderation in this and the other steps of phase 2. You're a work in progress, so stay active in the program and keep living sober to the best of your ability today. I really have to say that I love this guy. His work is just really wonderful. This is definitely going to stay in my library. So, we will be on to phase 3 and step 7. So I think that's actually going to finish out the book. So do not worry. I already have another one thought up. So, you know what? Let's go and do a step 8. Let's do a step 9 prayer. Ninth step prayer. Higher power. I pray for the right attitude to make my amends. Being ever mindful not to harm others in the process, I ask for your guidance in making indirect amends. Most important, I will continue to make amends by staying abstinent, helping others, and growing in spiritual progress. Because just because we suddenly went out and made a whole bunch of amends doesn't mean we're never going to have to make them again. So, we all mess up every once in a while, and I do, and it's usually I mess up to my husband, and I make my amends as quickly as possible because of how much I love him. So, if you have any thoughts, questions, or questions or comments, please leave them. And as always, I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you.